The courtroom smelled of polished wood, old paper, and tension. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, painting streaks of gold across the shiny floor, cutting sharp lines across the faces of those gathered. The air felt heavy, thick with anticipation, as if it could crack with a single word. Officer Marcus Hale stood rigid, his polished boots clicking against the tile, Ranger, his K-9 partner, sitting perfectly still by his side. The dog's eyes were alert, ears twitching at the faintest whisper of movement. Hale trusted Ranger more than most humans. He had a sixth sense for danger, a bond with Hale that needed no words. Across the aisle, Lena Brooks sat rigidly in the defendant's chair, pale and hollow-eyed, her hands folded so tightly the knuckles shone white. Her usually strong, confident posture had crumpled under the weight of accusation, armed robbery at a convenience store 3 months prior. The prosecutor, Daniel Wright, stood with a calm precision, clicking through slides of fingerprints, photos of the shattered store, and security footage still blurred with rain-soaked grain. Every word he spoke seemed carefully measured to paint Lena as guilty. The jury watched in silence, absorbing the images, the stories, the very idea that a young mother could commit such a violent crime. The gallery buzzed softly with the whispering of cameras and scribbling pens. Reporters leaned forward on the benches, trying to catch every glance, every twitch of emotion, every flinch. The air held a fragile tension, like the instant before a storm breaks. Families of victims and witnesses sat rigid, some clutching tissues, others gripping the edges of benches so tightly their fingernails left crescent-shaped impressions. Then the courtroom doors creaked open. Heads turned. Conversation stuttered to silence. In the doorway stood a small figure, almost swallowed by the massive space around her. 3-year-old Mia Brooks, Lena's daughter, clutched a faded teddy bear to her chest. Her blonde curls bounced as she stepped hesitantly forward, guided gently by her grandmother's firm hand. The judge's eyes narrowed in surprise. The courtroom had not anticipated a child in the proceedings, let alone one so young. The rustle of her tiny shoes against the polished floor punctuated the stillness. Ranger's ears twitched. Hale felt it instantly. The dog had sensed something unusual. He shifted, hand tightening on the leash, but didn't move. Ranger's eyes fixed on the little girl, unwavering, alert, and alert to more than just movement. Mia's eyes, wide and serious for her age, scanned the courtroom. She ignored her mother, her grandmother, and the pressing eyes of strangers. Instead, her gaze landed squarely on Ranger. Hale's chest tightened. He had seen Ranger react to countless situations, suspects, threats, missing children, but never like this. The dog's posture stiffened, tail lowered, muscles tense, a low, subtle whine vibrating from his chest. Mia took a small step forward, clutching her teddy bear like a shield, and whispered 2 words that seemed impossibly soft, yet carried across the hushed courtroom. "You remember." The words hung in the air, fragile and almost impossible to hear, yet their impact was immediate. Ranger froze completely, his head tilting slightly, eyes locked on the child. Hale's stomach dropped. Something was shifting. Every officer, attorney, and juror felt it, a pulse, a charge, a sudden realization that the room had tilted just slightly on its axis. The judge frowned, unsure if he should intervene, unsure if the child's presence violated protocol. He opened his mouth, then hesitated. Nobody moved. Even Wright, ever composed, the epitome of courtroom control, felt a twitch of uncertainty. Hale knelt slowly, careful not to startle the dog or the child. "Mia, sweetheart, what did you say?" His voice was gentle, coaxing, tinged with disbelief. Ranger's head never wavered. The bond between them, forged over years of shared tension and trust, had not failed him now. Mia did not answer immediately. Her gaze stayed on Ranger, unwavering, sharp, and unnervingly precise for a child of 3. Then, with deliberate care, she pointed not at her mother, not at Hale, but toward a man seated in the back of the courtroom. A dark suit, pressed and authoritative, sat rigid in the chair, hands folded as if unaware of the tiny observer's scrutiny. The murmur that rose among the spectators was barely audible, but enough to ripple across the room like the first tremor of an earthquake. Ranger's low whine became more insistent, almost vocal, a warning. Hale felt the hair on his arm stand on end. He had seen Ranger react before to danger, to fear, to deception, but never had the dog singled out someone with this clarity. The man in the dark suit stiffened. His composure, so carefully maintained throughout the morning, faltered for the first time. A bead of sweat traced down his temple. Right, the prosecutor. Hale's mind raced. What had just happened? How could a toddler, barely speaking full sentences, provoke a reaction in a dog so profound that it stopped a trial? Mia's voice cut through the tension once more. This time louder, yet still soft enough to chill the room. You remember. A heartbeat of silence followed. Every pair of eyes shifted between the child and the man. Hale tightened his grip on Ranger's leash, though the dog was already straining, poised, alert, ready to act. The courtroom seemed suspended, time itself holding its breath. And then Ranger emitted a single, trembling whine, sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. The sound echoed like a verdict, filling the silence with a promise of revelation. The man in the dark suit, Wright, shifted in his seat, as if aware that a moment of reckoning had arrived, a truth about to surface that no one, not even the jury, could ignore. The gavel in the judge's hand hovered midair, useless against the sudden gravity in the room. Hale felt his heart pound, adrenaline coursing through his veins, the air thick with anticipation. Something monumental had just begun, and everyone in the courtroom, from the tiniest child to the most experienced officer, sensed it. Outside, the city carried on unaware, sirens fading in the distance. Inside, a 3-year-old girl and a police dog had just stopped a trial with 2 simple words. The courtroom waited, suspended on the edge of disbelief, as the quiet storm of revelation began to gather. And then Mia took another step toward Ranger, her tiny shoes clicking against the tile. Ranger's muscles tensed. Hale swallowed hard. The man in the dark suit, the prosecutor, sat frozen, and a whisper of fear passed over his features. Something was about to happen. And no one in that courtroom would ever forget the moment when a 3-year-old's words became louder than the law itself. Ranger's eyes never left Mia. The dog's body was coiled, muscles taut, ears swiveling like radar dishes, every instinct screaming that something was off. Officer Marcus Hale felt a shiver crawl down his spine. Ranger had been with him through every imaginable danger, armed standoffs, car chases in pouring rain, tracking missing children through pitch-black forests. He had never hesitated, but now Ranger's focus was almost unnatural, almost knowing. Hale had no idea what the dog sensed, only that it was beyond the ordinary. The courtroom was frozen. The murmurs that had started after Mia's first words had stopped completely. Reporters clutched their pens, trying to record every twitch of the scene, every nuance in the child's expression, every subtle movement of Ranger. The jury leaned forward as if drawn by invisible strings. Even the judge, whose gavel had always maintained control over the chaos of trials, stared in disbelief. Across the room, Prosecutor Daniel Wright's composure was cracking. He had rehearsed this trial for weeks, confident in the evidence, fingerprints, security footage, a trail of the suspect's scent that Ranger himself had followed months before. Lena Brooks's arrest had seemed airtight, but now the air had shifted. Something about a 3-year-old and a dog had undermined the certainty of months of preparation. Mia took another deliberate step toward Ranger, her tiny hand clutching the fraying teddy bear like a shield. Her blue eyes were wide, unblinking, intense. Hale could see the focus, the clarity, the uncanny precision of her observation. Then, in a voice soft but commanding, she said again, "You remember." The sound cut through the room like a knife. Ranger let out a low, trembling whine, his snout pointing straight at Wright. Hale felt the dog's instinct, the culmination of years of training and life experience, meet something inexplicably human. Ranger wasn't just reacting to scent or sound, he was recognizing intent. And in that recognition, something dark hovered over the man in the dark suit. Jury's faces betrayed confusion and disbelief. The spectators shifted, leaning forward, craning to catch the impossible dynamic unfolding in front of them. The judge rubbed his forehead, torn between protocol and the undeniable tension in the room. Hale knelt beside Ranger, keeping one hand ready on the leash while trying not to interfere. The dog's focus was unshakable, trained obedience mixing with primal instinct, and Hale felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Ranger was not wrong. Wright straightened in his chair, voice tight. "What is this?" he demanded. "This is a courtroom, not a playground." He tried to reassert control, but his words sounded hollow, unconvincing, even to his own ears. Hale noticed beads of sweat forming at Wright's temple, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. Mia tilted her head, staring at Wright like she was weighing the balance of right and wrong with the wisdom of someone far older than 3. "You're wrong," she said softly, almost a whisper, yet perfectly audible. Ranger's low growl rumbled in agreement, a sound that carried the weight of certainty. The gallery went silent. A 3-year-old child and a police dog had upended the courtroom, and no one could deny it. Hale's mind raced. Ranger had tracked criminals, located hidden weapons, found missing children, all in situations where humans were either too slow or too blind. But now, the dog's attention was on a prosecutor. And somehow, the dog's instinct, combined with Mia's recognition, was shaking the foundation of the trial. Hale remembered that night months before when Ranger had tracked Lena's scent to her apartment. The trail had seemed airtight, unbroken. But now, with Mia's intervention, Hale considered the possibility he hadn't dared imagine. Had Ranger been misled? Was someone else involved? And why hadn't he noticed the subtle anomaly in the tracks back then? Mia took another tiny step forward. Ranger's muscles tensed even more, a silent growl vibrating in his chest. Hale knelt lower, whispering to the dog, "Steady, buddy, just stay. Wait." Ranger obeyed barely, as though the restraint was physical agony. The dog's eyes never left the child. Hale could feel the electric charge in the air, an almost tangible pull that drew the attention of everyone present. Then Mia pointed directly at Wright, not shaking, not uncertain. Her finger was straight, small, unyielding. "Him," she said. The word echoed in the chamber. The jury leaned forward as if trying to catch more than just sound, trying to grasp the weight behind the accusation. The spectators gasped softly, whispers rising like wind in a hollow canyon. Even the judge stiffened, gavel raised midair, unsure how to proceed. Ranger's reaction was immediate. He lunged forward a fraction, straining against the leash, growling low and menacing. Hale held him back, heart pounding. This was unprecedented. Never in his career had Ranger singled out someone like this in a courtroom, a space full of neutral observers, far from the chaos of the field. Ranger's behavior was deliberate, considered, a judgment in itself. Wright's face paled. He opened his mouth to protest, but words failed him. His usually commanding voice faltered, cracking under the pressure of scrutiny and the inexplicable certainty that Ranger's eyes carried. Hale noticed the subtle tremor in Wright's hands as they clutched the edge of the table, the tightness of his jaw, the rigidness of his posture. The man who had commanded the courtroom for weeks was suddenly vulnerable. Mia's gaze remained locked on Ranger. "He did it," she said, her voice a small but undeniable declaration. Ranger whined again, a sound full of affirmation. Hale felt a chill run down his spine. Somehow, a child and a dog had pieced together a truth that months of investigation and legal expertise had missed. The courtroom held its collective breath. Every eye in the room was fixed on the strange alignment of child, dog, and man. Hale could only kneel lower, one hand on Ranger's collar, one on the polished floor, feeling the tremor of tension reverberate through the courtroom. Outside, the world continued unaware. Inside, a 3-year-old and a police dog had begun unraveling a case that everyone thought was airtight. And in that suspended moment, Hale knew one thing. Nothing in his career, no training, no experience, had prepared him for what would come next. Because Ranger had never been wrong. And this time, The truth was about to break in ways no one could imagine. 3 months earlier, the night had been soaked in rain and shadow. Sirens screamed down narrow streets, their wails echoing against brick walls, announcing chaos that no one wanted to face. A convenience store lay shattered under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, glass strewn across the sidewalk like jagged confetti. Cash registers were ripped open. A clerk crouched on the floor, shaking, blood trickling from a gash across her temple. Every inch of the place screamed panic, fear, and confusion. Officer Marcus Hale had arrived first, Ranger at his side. The dog had immediately gone to work, sniffing the puddles, the broken glass, the disturbed air, alert for any trace of the perpetrator. Hale remembered the chill that crawled up his spine, a sense of unease stronger than anything he had felt in years on the job. Ranger moved with a purpose so precise it was almost unnatural, guiding Hale to the first set of muddy footprints, the scent of leather, the faint trace of perfume. Hale followed, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. By dawn, Lena Brooks had been arrested. The evidence seemed clear. Fingerprints, security footage, and Ranger's own tracking had led directly to her apartment. The city slept fitfully, reassured that justice had been served, that a dangerous criminal had been caught. Headlines would later call it an open and shut case. But Hale knew, and Ranger knew, that not everything about that night was simple or clean or understood. Something had happened that evening, hidden in the shadows, something that no report would capture, something the police never officially recorded. Mia Brooks had been wandering near her grandmother's house, sleep clinging to her like a heavy blanket. Her small hand gripped her teddy bear tightly, toes dragging in wet grass. She had slipped outside for a moment, eyes half closed, her mind somewhere between dreams and reality. That's when she saw him, a figure crouched low, moving carefully as though he were aware of the darkness hiding him. The man had tried to seem ordinary, polite, but Mia had studied him like a hawk, absorbing every movement, every whisper of intention. Ranger had been nearby on a late-night patrol, his paws silent on the wet pavement, his nose low, scenting the world with terrifying acuity. The dog had stopped suddenly, ears swiveling, body frozen. Hale had barely noticed at the time. There had been too much chaos at the store, too many urgent calls demanding attention. But Ranger had lingered, hesitant, nose tracing an invisible line that had no connection to Lena's scent. Back in the courtroom now, Hale felt the chill of memory return, sharper and colder. He looked at the man in the dark suit, Daniel Wright, seated stiffly across the room, jaw tight, posture rigid. Something about that night, about the tiny, inexplicable actions of a 3-year-old, had not left the pattern of evidence intact. Hale had trusted Ranger completely, but now he began to question what he had assumed. Mia, still clutching her teddy bear, stepped closer to Ranger. Hale could see her tiny chin lift in determination, a seriousness in her eyes that belied her age. Ranger responded instantly, body coiled, ready, ears pricked toward the one person in the room who had been part of that unspoken night. The connection between dog and girl was electric, unexplainable. Hale had been in many high-stakes situations, but he had never seen anything like this. Instinct, memory, and raw intuition converging across species and age. The jury shifted in their seats, leaning forward, sensing the unspoken tension. Even the judge, usually impervious to theatrics, fidgeted in his chair, uncertainty flickering across his lined face. Hale noticed the subtle trembling in Wright's hands as they gripped the edge of the table. Something in the room had changed. Something he had missed before, something that now demanded to be seen. Mia's voice, soft yet commanding, broke the silence. "He did it," she said, pointing at Wright. Ranger's low growl seemed to ripple across the courtroom, a vibration felt more than heard, an affirmation of the child's declaration. Hale's heart pounded. Every instinct in his body screamed that the dog's reaction was not just training, it was recognition, the acknowledgement of a hidden truth that no human could see. Hale's mind flashed back again to the parking garage near the convenience store, dimly lit and empty that night. Ranger had paused twice, once near Lena's apartment door, and once further down where the shadows had shifted, and the scent had been different. It had been subtle, almost imperceptible, and Hale had recorded it in his notes without fully grasping its significance. Only now did he understand. Someone else had been there, someone who had manipulated the scene, someone who had almost gotten away unnoticed. The courtroom seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the magnitude of the revelation sank in. Reporters scribbled frantically, pens shaking. Spectators whispered, faces pale, voices hushed. Hale's hand tightened on Ranger's leash, feeling the dog's tension, the raw, almost primal certainty emanating from the animal. The tiniest of human voices, Mia's, had disrupted months of evidence, months of confidence, and brought a shadow of truth into stark relief. The rain outside intensified, hammering against the courtroom windows, drumming a rhythm that mirrored the racing hearts inside. Hale could feel the story of that night, the unrecorded events, pressing against the present moment like water against a dam. It was about to break. And then in the corner of Hale's vision, Mia's finger pointed again, unwavering. Her eyes, clear and unwavering, locked onto right. Ranger growled once more, sharper this time, a warning, a signal. Hale felt his stomach twist. Something monumental had been revealed, something no one had seen coming. In that charged, silent courtroom, Hale realized the truth. The night no one had talked about, the night of rain, glass, and footprints, was not as simple as it had seemed. Someone had hidden in plain sight. Someone had manipulated events to frame Lena. And a 3-year-old had just remembered. Ranger stiffened, ears twitching, eyes narrowing. Hale swallowed hard. The dog's instincts were flawless. And now the unspoken secret of that night was about to resurface. The courtroom waited, suspended, hearts pounding, as a hidden truth prepared to explode into the light. And somewhere deep inside, Hale knew, nothing would ever be the same after this revelation. The courtroom buzzed with confusion. A charged silence hung in the air, thick as fog. Jurors leaned forward, eyes wide, scanning the child and the dog and the man in the dark suit as if searching for a hidden explanation. Reporters scribbled feverishly, cameras trained on the impossible scene unfolding. Even the judge, gavel raised midair, stared in disbelief, unable to reconcile months of evidence with the tension now saturating the room. Hale's hand tightened on Ranger's leash, feeling the dog's taut muscles, sensing the electric certainty that something monumental was about to happen. Lena Brooks sat frozen in her chair, trembling, tears brimming in her eyes. For months she had carried the weight of accusations that felt impossible to bear. Fingerprints, security footage, Ranger's own tracking, it all seemed to confirm her guilt. But now all of it was in question. She tried to look at her daughter, but Mia's gaze never left Ranger. Hale could see Lena's hope and fear tangled together, twisting in her chest like barbed wire. Mia stepped closer to Ranger, her tiny shoes clicking softly against the polished floor. She pointed, unflinching, at Prosecutor Daniel Wright. Hale noticed Wright's sudden pallor, the way his hands clenched into fists on the table, knuckles white as marble. His calm, measured demeanor, the armor he had worn so carefully, began to crack, revealing something darker beneath. "You're wrong," Mia said, her voice small but sharp, like a blade slicing through the tension in the room. Ranger growled low, affirming her declaration, his chest vibrating with raw certainty. Hale felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had never seen a dog react like this, so deliberate, so unwavering, so utterly convinced of the truth. And Hale trusted Ranger with his life. The jury murmured nervously, exchanging glances. Some shifted in their seats, leaning closer as if trying to absorb the impossible logic of the moment. Wright cleared his throat, attempting authority. "Objection, this is preposterous. This is a courtroom, not—" His words faltered. He swallowed hard, and the sweat forming at his temples betrayed the doubt creeping in. Hale could see it. The certainty in the dog's reaction, the precision in the child's memory, had unsettled him. Hale's mind raced back to the night of the robbery. Rain pelted the streets. Broken glass reflected red and blue emergency lights. Ranger had tracked Lena's scent to her apartment, and Hale had filed the report, believing it confirmed her guilt. But now he remembered something subtle, something almost imperceptible in the original report. Ranger had hesitated, once near Lena's door, and once again near the parking garage where shadows had shifted in ways that had seemed unimportant at the time. Hale's pulse quickened. Could someone have manipulated the scene? Could Lena have been set up? The thought, previously unthinkable, now seemed undeniable. Ranger's reaction, combined with Mia's precise recollection, was telling him the truth that the official reports had missed. Mia's tiny finger remained unwavering, pointing directly at Wright. "He did it," she repeated, almost as if spelling out the verdict. Ranger's growl escalated into a low rumble, vibrating through the room, a warning that sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. Hale felt a surge of adrenaline. Something monumental was happening. A child and a dog together were revealing a truth no adult had recognized. Wright's composure crumbled. His eyes darted around the room, desperate, as though searching for an escape from the child's unyielding gaze and the dog's lethal focus. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath, but even he could feel the doubt creeping into his mind. Hale had seen criminals break under far less pressure. Wright was beginning to fracture. The judge raised his gavel, voice trembling. "Order in the courtroom. All parties remain calm." But the words rang hollow. The courtroom had been transformed. Months of preparation, investigation, and prosecution had been undone by the unlikely alliance of a toddler and a police dog. Hale could see the jurors' hands tightening around benches, some leaning forward, their expressions a mixture of fear, awe, and disbelief. Hale remembered the subtle evidence from the night of the robbery, the footprints in the muddy parking lot, the fleeting shadow near the storm drain, the faint scent that Ranger had hesitated over. It had seemed irrelevant then, but now it loomed like a shadow over the entire case. Ranger had sensed it, Mia had remembered it, and Wright had tried to hide it. The tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Hale could feel Ranger's muscles twitching, his tail stiff, his eyes locked on Wright. Mia took a tiny step forward, her small hand gripping the teddy bear, her gaze unrelenting. "Not her," she said. "Him." The simplicity of the statement and the unwavering authority in her voice sent ripples across the courtroom. Hale realized the truth now. Lena had been framed. Everything pointing to her guilt was circumstantial, manipulated by someone clever, patient, and ruthless. Ranger had sensed the deception. Mia had remembered the night with unerring clarity. The pieces were converging, and Wright's mask of control was crumbling under their combined weight. The courtroom erupted in whispers, some rising to full-blown astonishment. The jury looked at one another, unsure how to process the revelation unfolding before them. The judge slammed the gavel, struggling to maintain order, but it was too late. The balance had shifted irreversibly. Hale knelt beside Ranger, feeling the dog's heartbeat through the taut leash, sensing the intensity of the moment. Then Mia stepped closer, small fingers trembling slightly, and whispered to Ranger, "Find him." The dog stiffened, ears pricked, muscles coiled. Hale's stomach dropped. Ranger had never failed. And now the pursuit of truth was about to move from whispers and hesitation to action. All eyes turned toward Wright. His hands shook. His carefully curated persona of confidence and control had dissolved. Hale could see fear in his eyes, real, palpable fear. Ranger growled again, low and menacing, a prelude to the reckoning that was about to unfold. Something unseen lurked beneath the surface. Hale could feel it. Someone had orchestrated everything that night, framing Lena, manipulating evidence, and walking freely among them. Mia and Ranger had just illuminated the first cracks in that carefully constructed facade. The courtroom waited, suspended on the edge of disbelief, as Hale, Ranger, and a 3-year-old girl prepared to uncover a hidden truth that no one could have anticipated. And Wright, for the first time, knew that he might not escape the storm that had just begun. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the security footage was queued up on the projector. The hum of the machine and the faint whir of the lights created a surreal soundtrack to the tension. Jurors leaned forward, reporters scribbled frantically, and the judge's gavel hovered uselessly in his hand. Every eye was fixed on the screen, where grainy, flickering footage slowly revealed the night of the robbery, a night no one had truly seen until now. Rain streaked the lens, blurring the world outside the convenience store. Shadows moved across wet concrete. A lone figure, tall and deliberate, emerged from the darkness, a black umbrella folded under his arm. Hale's stomach dropped as he recognized the movements, calculated, precise, confident. The figure bent low near a storm drain, almost imperceptibly planting something, then straightened and moved toward the exit. The details were subtle, nearly invisible to anyone without Ranger's intuition. But to Hale, and now to everyone watching, the scene was unmistakable. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Lena's defense attorney let out a low whistle, eyes wide, fingers gripping the edge of the bench. The jury murmured in astonishment. The footage confirmed what Hale and Ranger had already suspected. Someone else had been there that night. Someone who had manipulated the scene, planted evidence, and framed Lena. Wright's jaw tightened. His composure, already fragile, began to fracture under the scrutiny of the footage and the combined weight of Mia's declaration and Ranger's unwavering focus. "This is irrelevant. This footage is meaningless," he barked, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he could feel the cracks forming in the carefully constructed story he had presented. Mia, still clutching her teddy bear, took a step forward, tiny fingers pointing at the screen. "There," she said, her voice soft but firm. "That's him." Ranger growled low, a vibration that seemed to echo through the floorboards. Hale's pulse raced. The dog's instincts had never failed. And now, combined with Mia's clarity, the truth could no longer be denied. The footage replayed slowly, frame by frame. Hale could see it clearly now. The man in the dark suit, Wright himself, bending down near the storm drain, his movements subtle but deliberate. Something small and crucial changed hands, something that would have altered the scent trail, confused Ranger's tracking, and framed Lena with precision. The man had exploited the chaos, using the night's rain, shadows, and confusion to mask his actions. Lena began shaking, tears streaming down her face as the realization dawned. She had been innocent all along. Her sobs choked in her throat as she whispered to Hale, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it." Her voice, raw and fractured, carried across the courtroom, cutting through the tension like a blade. Wright's protestations grew desperate. This footage could have been tampered with. It's fabricated. His eyes darted around, searching for support, but none came. Every officer, every juror, every member of the gallery could see the truth, carefully obscured by shadows, but undeniable now. Hale's heart pounded as the layers of deception unfolded before him. Mia whispered again to Ranger, "Find him." The dog stiffened, muscles taut, ears swiveling like radar dishes. Hale released the leash slightly, allowing Ranger to move closer to Wright, a silent predator guided by years of training and an instinct that no human could replicate. The courtroom seemed to contract, the walls closing in on the unfolding drama. The jurors leaned forward, some holding their hands over their mouths. Reporters frantically typed notes and snapped pictures, trying to capture every movement. The judge, finally regaining some composure, slammed the gavel. "Order! All parties remain calm. Court is in session." But even his booming voice could not compete with the charged energy of the moment. Outside the footage, Hale replayed the night in his mind. Rain, glass, footprints, Ranger's hesitation near the storm drain, all pieces of a puzzle that now fit together perfectly. The dog had sensed it all. Mia had remembered it. And now it was impossible to ignore. Lena had been framed. Ranger's growl escalated, vibrating in the courtroom like a low drumbeat of truth. Mia's tiny hand remained steady, her eyes locked on Wright, who now stood rigid, hands trembling, face pale. Hale noticed for the first time the beads of sweat at Wright's hairline, the subtle quiver in his posture. The man who had commanded authority for months was now a figure of fear and uncertainty. Hale signaled to the judge. "Your Honor, if I may," he said, voice steady but urgent. "Ranger has tracked this individual before. Combined with this footage, and with the child's testimony, it is clear that the evidence against Lena is not only flawed but deliberately manipulated." The judge's gavel dropped with a thud. Silence. Then murmurs. The weight of revelation pressed down on everyone in the room. Hale could feel Ranger's pulse through the leash, taut with anticipation, ready to act if necessary. Mia's voice, small but insistent, reminded everyone of the undeniable truth. Not her, him. Wright's panic was now visible for all to see. He looked around, desperate, searching for any escape from the mounting evidence, but the walls were closing in. Hale could feel the tension crackle in the air, a storm about to break. Ranger's eyes never left Wright, unwavering, instinctively sensing the danger and deception that had eluded every human observer for months. Then the impossible happened. Ranger slipped slightly forward, pulling against Hale's restraint, focused entirely on the man who had orchestrated the frame. Hale steadied him, heart pounding. The courtroom gasped. Mia's eyes sparkled with understanding, the realization of the power of truth in her small hands. And in that suspended, electric moment, Hale understood. The night that no one had truly seen, the rain-soaked chaos, the shadowy figure, the manipulated evidence, was finally coming into the light. Ranger, Mia, and the grainy footage had combined to unearth a truth no one could ignore. The courtroom, frozen in awe and disbelief, waited for the next move. Hale's gut tightened. Ranger's growl deepened. And Wright, for the first time, realized he might not walk away. The storm of revelation had only just begun. The courtroom had erupted into controlled chaos. Lawyers shouted over one another. Reporters scrambled to keep their cameras steady, and jurors leaned forward, gripping benches, hearts hammering. Ranger, muscles taut and eyes locked on Wright, began to pull against Hale's leash. Hale tried to hold him back, but the dog's determination was palpable, almost electric. Every instinct in Ranger screamed that the moment to act had arrived. Hale's mind raced. Months of investigation, of evidence carefully collected, of legal arguments meticulously prepared, had led to this. And now the truth demanded action. Mia's tiny hand tightened on her teddy bear, but her eyes never left Ranger. She whispered almost to herself, "Find him." The dog responded instantly, growling low, a deep vibration that shook the courtroom floor. Hale knew Ranger had never failed, not once, and that the dog's focus now was absolute. Wright's face drained of color. His composure, which had survived months of preparation, crumbled under the intense scrutiny of the child, the dog, and the evidence now on display. "This is impossible," he muttered under his breath, voice shaky. Hale could see the tremor in Wright's hands, the quiver of his jaw. The courtroom was no longer a place of legal procedure. It had become a theater of revelation, and Wright was center stage. Ranger lunged forward suddenly, pulling Hale along. The dog's instincts guided him with unerring precision, weaving through desks and startled jurors. Hale struggled to keep pace, adrenaline surging through his veins. The gallery erupted in panic. "Stay back," a bailiff shouted, but Ranger's momentum was unstoppable. Mia squealed in a mixture of excitement and fear, but she didn't move from her place near the front. Wright bolted toward the main entrance, jacket flapping, his steps quick and erratic. Reporters scrambled, cameras swinging wildly, catching fleeting images of the chase. Jurors held their breath, some frozen in disbelief. The doors to the street were pushed open as Wright tried to escape, his polished shoes slipping on the wet courthouse floor. Hale and Ranger followed close behind, the dog's paws striking the tile with precise, powerful steps. The chase spilled into the streets outside. Rain had returned, drumming a frantic rhythm against the pavement, making the world slick and treacherous. Streetlights flickered, reflecting off puddles, creating a kaleidoscope of shadows. Hale's lungs burned as he ran, the cold rain stinging his face. Ranger, unyielding, closed the distance, guided by instinct and the unspoken bond between dog and officer. Wright's panic was raw now, primal. He glanced over his shoulder, eyes wide, realizing the impossibility of escape. "Stop him!" he shouted to unseen aides, but no one responded fast enough. Hale could hear Ranger's low growl approaching, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very air, a warning and a threat all at once. The chase led them to the courthouse parking garage, a dimly lit labyrinth of concrete and shadow. The rain dripped from the ceiling, pooling in uneven puddles on the floor. Wright's breath was ragged, his footsteps echoed eerily. Hale could see him ahead, moving desperately toward a black SUV idling near the exit. Ranger's eyes never wavered. His nose was low, tracking the human scent mixed with months-old evidence, zeroing in on the truth. Then Hale remembered the footage from the night of the robbery. Wright had crouched near a storm drain in this very garage, planting evidence to frame Lena. The memory surged back, sharp and undeniable. Ranger had sensed it then, hesitated, and now the dog was finally moving to confirm it. Hale's pulse quickened. Everything was converging in this one pivotal moment. Wright reached the SUV, fumbling with the door. Ranger lunged, paws striking the concrete growl building into a commanding roar. Hale ran faster, the leash taut, adrenaline pumping like wildfire. The surrounding security cameras flickered, casting ghostly light across the scene. The garage seemed suspended in time, every drip of water, every echo of a footstep amplified. Ranger circled the vehicle, barking sharply, alerting Hale to something hidden. Hale squatted, eyes narrowing. There, half obscured by shadow and rain, was a small, blood-stained glove and a folded receipt from the convenience store, the crucial piece of evidence Wright had tried to bury. Hale's stomach twisted. This was the final link, the proof that Lena had been framed. Wright froze, realizing the exposure of his deception. His eyes darted frantically, scanning the garage for an escape, but Hale and Ranger were closing in. "No, no!" he shouted, desperation breaking into panic. Ranger growled again, low and threatening, the sound echoing like a warning bell in the empty garage. Hale took a cautious step forward, keeping the dog restrained but ready. Then, in a moment that would later be replayed countless times on news broadcasts, Wright stumbled backward, nearly slipping in the puddles. Ranger lunged, restraining the man's movements with precise, controlled force. Hale reached him moments later, handcuffs snapping into place. The truth, long buried under deceit and manipulation, had finally emerged. Mia ran toward her mother, tiny feet splashing through puddles. Lena scooped her daughter into trembling arms, tears streaming freely. Hale kept Ranger close, feeling the dog's steady, unwavering presence. Wright, now subdued and exposed, could only slump in defeat, the weight of his actions pressing down in the stark light of revelation. The courthouse parking garage, once a stage of manipulation and fear, had become a theater of justice. Ranger, steadfast and instinctive, had led the way, and a 3-year-old girl with nothing but clarity and courage had pointed the path. But Hale felt it deep in his bones. Though Wright had been caught, the story was far from over. Someone else had likely aided him. And though the immediate threat was neutralized, the undercurrents of danger still lingered in the shadows of the night. The storm outside continued to hammer the streets, rain slicing through darkness. Ranger's ears twitched, muscles still coiled, eyes scanning the perimeter. Hale's gaze followed, tension tight in his chest. The night had revealed its first layer of truth, but he knew there were still secrets waiting to surface. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the garage, a presence watched, silent, calculating, waiting. The chase had ended, but the story and the danger was far from over. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle as the chaos of the courthouse parking garage began to settle. Lena Brooks, soaked to the bone, cradled her 3-year-old daughter Mia, who clutched her faded teddy bear to her chest. The child's wide blue eyes sparkled with a mixture of triumph and innocence, completely unaware of the chaos she had helped orchestrate. Hale watched them, heart pounding, feeling the weight of months of injustice lift just slightly from Lena's shoulders. For once, relief softened the harsh edges of the night. Ranger, chest heaving, remained alert, his gaze scanning the surroundings like a living radar. He had tracked deceit, chased lies, and confronted danger countless times, but tonight had been different. A child's memory and a dog's instinct had combined to uncover a truth that no adult had seen. Hale reached down, stroking Ranger's head, feeling the vibration of the growls settle into quiet satisfaction. Lena hugged Mia tightly, tears streaming freely, soaking both their faces. "You saved me," Lena whispered, voice breaking, trembling with both exhaustion and gratitude. Mia leaned her tiny forehead against her mother's shoulder, still clutching her bear, and whispered, "Ranger helped too." Hale felt a lump rise in his throat. It had been the perfect partnership: child, mother, and dog. The improbable trio had unraveled months of deception in a single night. In the courthouse, the jurors and reporters were still reeling. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every moment for the endless replay of social media, news outlets, and the city's collective memory. Analysts reviewed footage, dissecting the precise movements of Wright that night. Hale realized the courtroom itself had become a stage for the unexpected. The tiniest witness and the most loyal of dogs had shifted the entire narrative. But Hale felt unease tugging at the edges of his relief. Ranger had sensed something before, during the chase, that was still lingering, an intangible, silent presence that had not yet been revealed. Hale scanned the dark corners of the garage, past the flashing police lights, and felt that unmistakable prickle of caution. Ranger's ears twitched, muscles coiled, eyes flicking toward shadows where no one had entered or exited. Something was still out there. Mia, still holding her teddy bear, tilted her head and looked toward the SUV where Wright had been apprehended. "Not finished," she whispered. Hale froze. The child's words, though small, carried a weight he couldn't ignore. He looked at Ranger, whose gaze now followed Mia's, tense and unyielding. Hale's stomach sank. Ranger hadn't misread the situation. His instincts were flawless. Detectives cuffed Wright and escorted him toward a waiting squad car. The prosecutor's failure was complete, his face pale and hollow with defeat. Yet Hale's gut told him Wright was not the only one. Someone else had aided him in the frame, someone still free, hidden, and watching the aftermath. Hale's pulse quickened. Ranger stiffened again, growling softly but with intention, signaling the presence of another threat lurking in the shadows. Lena, oblivious to the danger still in play, held Mia close, whispering promises she had failed to keep for months, that they were safe now, that the nightmare had ended. Mia, however, was not fully convinced. Her eyes scanned the darkened streets outside the courthouse, scanning, searching, noticing what no adult could see. She leaned against Ranger, murmuring, "They're still here." Hale felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. The storm of truth was far from over. Inside, the courtroom had emptied, leaving only officers, Hale, and the remaining reporters. Hale reviewed the security footage again, this time scrutinizing every shadow and reflection. Subtle movements at the edges of the frames hinted at someone else's involvement, a hidden figure whose identity remained elusive. Ranger's nose twitched, catching scents Hale couldn't interpret, confirming the child's instinct. Mia had sensed it before anyone else. She had remembered before anyone else. Hale knelt beside Mia and whispered, "Can you show me?" The child nodded slightly, tiny hand gripping Ranger's fur. She pointed toward the side alley, where shadows stretched long and flickering in the police lights. Hale's chest tightened. Ranger growled, muscles coiled, prepared for confrontation. The evidence of Wright's involvement had been revealed, but Hale knew intuitively that this secondary presence was far more dangerous. Someone had orchestrated events behind the scenes, manipulating not only Wright, but the entire frame of Lena's arrest. The rain had returned, falling softly now, creating slick reflections across the pavement. Hale took a deep breath, crouching low, Ranger beside him, Mia in his line of sight. The child whispered again, "They watch from the dark." Hale felt a cold shiver run through him. Ranger's hackles rose slightly and his growl deepened. Hale realized the implications. This wasn't just a case of a framed robbery. It was a calculated conspiracy, one that had remained hidden in plain sight until tonight. Lena clutched Mia tightly, unaware of the new threat. Hale glanced at her, her eyes brimming with tears and relief, and then at Ranger, whose unwavering focus reminded him that vigilance could not end with Wright's arrest. The child's words had to be taken seriously. She had observed what adults had missed, remembered what adults had ignored, and sensed what adults could not perceive. Mia's small hand pointed toward a black SUV parked inconspicuously near the courthouse steps. Hale followed her gesture, eyes narrowing. Ranger's ears pricked, body stiffening. Hale realized that the chase had only revealed the first layer of deception. Another layer, deeper and more dangerous, still lingered, watching, calculating. The courthouse steps, slick with rain, reflected the flashing police lights like fractured mirrors. Hale could feel the tension of the night pressing in from all sides, a reminder that justice was rarely clean, rarely simple. Ranger growled low, and Hale knew instinctively. Whatever came next would be revealed only by the smallest of witnesses and the most loyal of partners. And in that moment, Hale understood. The story was far from over. The courtroom, the streets, and the shadows beyond the courthouse steps held secrets that would challenge everything they thought they knew. Ranger, Mia, and Hale were ready. But the unseen eyes watching from the darkness had no intention of waiting quietly. The storm was not finished. And in the quiet after the rain, Mia whispered, clutching her teddy bear, "They're still here." Hale's gut tightened, Ranger's growl deepened, and the night seemed to hold its breath. The final act was approaching. The night had deepened, stretching shadows across the courthouse steps and surrounding streets. Rain fell in steady sheets, drumming against rooftops and puddles, masking the soft crunch of footsteps that had no right to be there. Hale crouched beside Ranger, his senses taut, body coiled like a spring, eyes scanning every corner. Mia clutched her teddy bear, small and brave, her wide eyes reflecting the flashing red and blue of patrol cars. She had survived months of fear and uncertainty, but Hale knew the real danger had only begun. Ranger's growl rolled low in his chest, vibrating through the wet concrete. Hale could feel it through the leash, a predator sensing prey, a loyal guardian recognizing danger beyond the perception of any human. Hale followed Ranger's gaze to the black SUV parked across the street, half hidden by shadows and flickering streetlights. Hale's heart tightened. Something in the air screamed that Wright had not acted alone. Mia, tugging gently at Hale's sleeve, whispered, "They're there in the dark." Her voice was soft, almost a breath, but charged with conviction. Hale looked down at her, seeing the clarity in her gaze, and realized the child's perception had not wavered since the night of the robbery. She had seen, remembered, and sensed the hidden threat adults had ignored. Hale swallowed hard. Ranger stiffened further, ears swiveling toward the darkness, muscles taut. Hale moved cautiously forward, Ranger leading the way, every step calculated, silent, deliberate. Mia's tiny hand brushed against Hale's sleeve, grounding him in the gravity of her presence. The trio advanced toward the SUV, shadows shifting with every flicker of rain-soaked light. Hale's pulse hammered in his ears. Every instinct told him the danger was near, that the orchestrator of Lena's nightmare lurked just beyond the visible, watching, waiting, calculating. Suddenly, movement. A figure emerged from behind a nearby lamppost, tall, deliberate, hands hidden in pockets, posture unreadable. Ranger's growl escalated, vibrating against Hale's ribs like a warning drum. Hale's eyes narrowed, trained and instinctive, recognizing a familiar, chilling silhouette, one that had guided Wright, one that had manipulated every step of Lena's ordeal. The architect of deception had revealed himself. "Stay back," Hale warned, hand ready on Ranger's collar. Mia clutched her teddy bear tighter, but her eyes never left the figure. Hale's mind raced. He knew this wasn't just about the robbery anymore. This was personal, precise, and dangerous. Ranger growled again, low and menacing, as if the dog alone could read the human intent lurking in the shadows. The figure stepped forward, hands raised slightly, a crooked smile breaking through the darkness. "I see you've met my little helpers," he said, voice calm but with an edge that sent a chill down Hale's spine. "The child, the dog, quite the combination. Clever, really, but you've only scratched the surface." Hale felt his stomach tighten. This was the person who had orchestrated Lena's framing, manipulating Wright like a pawn. The man had remained hidden, invisible, while every piece of evidence had been doctored. And now, facing Hale, Ranger, and the tiny girl who had seen too much, he realized he had miscalculated. Mia's lips pressed together, small hands trembling slightly, but she didn't falter. "Why?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly across the wet street, small yet resolute. "Why hurt my mom?" The simplicity of her question was devastating, cutting through years of layered deception. Hale felt the weight of it, the purity of the child's truth, sharpened the tension in the air. Ranger stepped forward, body coiled, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the man. Hale gripped the leash, careful to maintain control but ready for action. Every instinct screamed that the figure was dangerous, that the night's events, the months of fear, had led to this confrontation. The man's smile faltered, eyes narrowing. "You're clever," he said softly, almost admiringly, "but cleverness doesn't save you from what's coming." He reached into his coat. Hale tensed, ready to intervene, Ranger vibrating with a primal alert. Mia clutched her teddy bear closer, sensing the sudden change, her eyes wide, sharp. Ranger lunged. The motion was swift, precise, perfect. Hale barely had to move, the dog intercepting the figure's arm, knocking the object to the wet pavement. The man stumbled, surprise flashing across his face, hands scrambling. Ranger's growl rose to a full bark, a command that reverberated through the empty street. Hale took the opportunity, moving fast, pinning the man against the SUV. His hands moved like trained steel, cuffing the figure as Ranger stayed tense, unyielding, a wall of fur and muscle. The storm seemed to hold its breath as the final player in Lena's nightmare was finally caught. Mia ran to her mother's side, tears mingling with the rain. "It's over, Mom," she whispered, voice trembling with relief. Lena held her tightly, rocking her, silent sobs shaking her frame. Hale knelt beside Ranger, letting the dog relax slightly, sensing the danger had passed, at least for the moment. Officers arrived moments later, securing the man. Hale watched as the figure, once untouchable, now powerless, was led to a waiting squad car. Ranger remained alert, ears twitching, tail stiff, eyes scanning the shadows. Hale patted his head, whispering, "Good job, buddy. You didn't miss a thing." Ranger's tail flicked slightly, acknowledgement of duty fulfilled, instinct sharpened, loyalty proven. The rain began to ease, the storm's fury fading into a steady drizzle. Hale watched Lena and Mia embrace, the child's small form radiating courage beyond her years. The city lights reflected on wet asphalt, fractured and shimmering like scattered memories of the chaos that had passed. Hale realized that the bond between the mother, the child, and the dog had not only revealed the truth but restored hope that had been buried under deceit. Yet Hale could not shake the feeling of lingering eyes. Somewhere beyond the city lights someone had watched, someone had orchestrated shadows that had yet to be fully understood. The storm of deceit might have been interrupted, but it was far from over. Ranger's gaze flicked to the darkness beyond the streetlights, alert and unrelenting. Hale felt it too. Vigilance must continue. Mia, cradling her teddy bear, looked up at Hale, tiny voice serious. "They're still out there," she said softly. Hale nodded, heart tight. He knew the truth. The night's events had uncovered a criminal web, but some threads remained tangled, waiting. Ranger growled once more, low and steady, a silent promise of protection. The courthouse and streets fell quiet, save for the gentle patter of rain. Hale stood, watching the mother and daughter, realizing that their courage, combined with Ranger's unerring instincts, had revealed justice in a world that had seemed intent on hiding the truth. But as the trio walked back toward the courthouse steps, Hale could feel it in the back of his mind, the lingering tension, the subtle weight of unseen watchers. The night had ended, the storm subsided, the truth partially revealed. Yet the shadows whispered, the story was not fully done. And somewhere in the darkened streets beyond, eyes remained watching, waiting, patient. The city would sleep uneasy tonight. And Hale, Ranger, and a 3-year-old girl would never forget the night a child's 2 words and a dog's instinct stopped a trial, uncovered a conspiracy, and confronted darkness itself.